W4LJS.
W4LJ, what was it?
Lima Juliet Sierra, W4LJS.
In South Carolina.
W4LGS. W4LGS, is that correct?
Close. It's Whiskey 4, Lima Juliet Sierra.
Roger, Roger. Close enough. Well, I have a thing about Glenn Close Enough. Glenn Close Enough designed my coffee maker. And you know what I mean by Glenn Close Enough is every time I make a pot of coffee and go to pour it, it will spill. I mean, it doesn't matter at what rate I pour the coffee, it will spill. And I say, there you go. That's an example of Glenn Close Enough.
Yep, I understand. I understand. Well, I just happened to trip across you here on the band today, and thought I'd give a call in and say hello. Joe, you got a nice signal, by the way. And I'm down kind of near another station you talked to earlier. I'm just a couple miles from the Charlotte, North Carolina city limits, but in South Carolina, across the state line, and a little place called Lake Wylie. And anyway. I thought I'd give you a quick call. Name here is Larry, and just catch your thoughts.
Roger, Larry. Well, it sounds good. You've got a great signal. How much power are you running?
Currently about, I'd say about close to 500.
Roger, Roger. Well, you're giving me in excess of a 15 over, so you know, can't go wrong with that, Roger.
Roger. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Is actually I've got a Yaesu FTDX 5000, and really I haven't used it very often, but I actually am trying a little AL80B linear, and I've got the Yaesu in its Class A mode. I'm running about 30 watts, and it's driving the AL80B. And on the mic side, I've got a Heil PR40, and I've got a what is actually was used a bunch in radio stations for mic processing. I've got a DBX 286A, if you know what that is.
Oh, roger that. Love DVX stuff. Probably too rambunctious for my situation. I'm using ART preamp and third octave equalizer into an older Yaesu 990, about 30-year-old radio, but it's been pretty heavily modified on the incoming and the outgoing side, so I guess I'm going to be running that, and then we into Heathkit SB220 and then up to an inverted V. So, and on your audio, I'm just thinking there, I'm always trying to get folks to come just a little brighter. I'm always looking for a couple of dB boost on the top end just to add a little clearance to the Clearwater, you know.
Roger, Roger. Well, that's kind of curious. As a matter of fact, I was kind of thinking of going and listening on YouTube in a few days to see what things sound like. The way that I've done setup on this rig here is I take and tune it in on a second receiver and use a audio recorder on the computer system and sit there and record it through another receiver to get an idea of what I'm sounding like on the air and things like that. So anyway, I'll enjoy listening to the recording, Joe, and there were some other guys trying to call you here, so I'll just jump out of here and let you catch a couple more here before time is up here.
Roger, Larry. Well, three's that way, sir. You know, my philosophy is that, you know, all this stuff moves by skywave, and that means that it's being reflected back to the receive station. Nothing's moving ground wave hardly, it's all skywave. And sometimes skywave, a lot of times, there are other reflections at slightly higher altitudes that come back and join the original reflection. And the thing is that higher altitude reflection is coming back at a little different phase angle. And so what happens is you start to get some cancellation in the audio, and it starts at the top end. It starts on the high frequency end of the audio spectrum and works its way down. So I always think about that, and so I usually crank in a little bit more top end than what I think would be necessary, because I realize that that's the first thing that's going to go down the road. Roger?
Oh, yeah, and you're correct. Actually, I use that effect as I had a problem with power line noise here for that couldn't be gotten rid of for a while. The power company was kind of a little bit slow on correcting it, and I ended up putting a noise canceller on the receive line to this radio and used that exact effect. In fact, for the directional antennas we use on like AM broadcast antennas, phase cancellation is how you make them work, and the same thing applies to audio as well. You are very correct, Joe.
Roger, name's Jim, but close enough. It's got. I'll answer to any at lunchtime, Roger.
Oh, Roger, I've got it now, Jim. Actually, I should have gotten that, but same name as my oldest son. I'm sorry, but I've got it now.
Roger. So you have a background in broadcasting?
Oh, yeah, I've been well, in fact, I still do some. In fact, I was out yesterday, so I guess I still do some. I've been an independent contractor, and we take care of radio stations. Been out to Louisville quite a few times, working on little stations a group used to have out there, and things like that. So, yeah, I've had a little exposure to broadcasting.
Roger. Well, I retired after 50 years of broadcasting, and then opened my own recording studio, broadcast-related recording studio, for another quite a few years. So it's a small world, Roger. Oh yeah. It is. There's just a lot of people who are in the broadcast industry that you find on the air. Makes it kind of interesting to talk to, and my son is kind of taking over a lot of the business, and I still fix more of the transmitters, do more of the RF and things like that, and he does more of the IT-related work, which is increasingly becoming what broadcast engineering is. Oh, Roger, yeah. Clear channel, 3 guys in a basement in Syracuse doing the programming for 1,400 radio stations. I mean the audio tracks and everything. 3 guys in a basement. That's Clear Channel, or iHeartRadio, I'm sorry. Yeah, I spent, from 1970 to 79 with WHAS in Louisville as production director.
Roger, yep. As well as, like I said, I'd been out that way. I used to work for a chain that had bought a couple. This chain was actually buying up small AM radio stations and converting them over to different formats and things like that, trying to make things work and things like that. And in their case, didn't work out that well, but, it happens. And we do stations around the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and do some rather large ones and some rather small ones all at the same time, and help people with whatever we can help them with to be able to serve the public and hopefully have a little fun while doing it, too.
Oh, roger that. Well, it didn't work out too well for iHeart either. I think they just took a Chapter 13 for $20 million relief, I think.
Well, I think that might be B with a B, but yeah, I recall hearing that.
I think you're right. I didn't want to say it. I couldn't imagine that number, but I think it is $20 billion, which is only half of their indebtedness, $40 billion. I mean, somebody who's in charge of this wreck.
Well, yeah, they were paying just incredible prices for radio stations some years back when they were growing the group, and FM stations around the market here were going for sometimes $30, $50, $60 million for a single FM station, and that's a little bit of a debt to have to overcome to run the station down the road.
Oh yeah. Even if you have people going out with guns collecting, you're still not going to be able to make it. So you just wonder who on the FCC would allow individuals to become responsible for 1,400 radio stations. Talk about money changing hands there.
Oh yeah, and also too, the latest thing is now they've even gotten rid of the old main studio rule, and so you no longer have to have any employees in the market. You know, if you've got a way for the audience to contact you and things like that, you can have simply a transmitter there and well, hopefully a contract engineer to put you on the air if you go off or something, but and nothing else.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, all they have to do, I think, is to make an announcement once a day about a possible .com location or well, anyway, internet location where somebody can go and look at the books or whatever. And that's the only thing they need. Otherwise, those three guys in Syracuse are keeping it rolling, you know.
Oh yeah. It's really changed a lot, and it's been kind of a, you know, for my 2 cents, it's been a kind of a negative thing for, you know, I mean, a localized public service, because you know, when I came up in radio, it was, you know, public service for a market that you were expected to serve the people of your market in exchange for the ability to, you know, operate your radio station and make money doing it.
Right, the privilege of operating the radio station. Well, those days are long gone, you know. They could care less. The city could burn down. You know, they have, I think they have about half a newsman for usually 14 radio stations. That's all consolidated into a telephone booth downtown somewhere.
Yeah, it seems that way these days. There's really not too much done when it comes down to, you know, the local public service aspect of the business and things has really faded down a lot. And I understand there's new media and there's new ways for people to communicate, but I think radio is still a viable way for, you know, communities to have some cohesiveness, togetherness, and appropriate information for just them that's readily available.
Roger. Well, you know, the thing that the station I used to work at when I was 21 down in Florida, WJNO, a nice little flagship operation, been in business for 20 years at that point. Well, I just heard recently that you know, that's West Palm is Rush Limbaugh's hometown, and they wanted a more prestigious radio station to carry them, so they just swapped call letters between the one station and the other station, not giving rats whatever about the tradition of the one station and the history of service. Doesn't matter to them. It's just call letters, you know.
Well, and money is what it comes down to. Is now I've seen that in a bunch of different markets, to where you'll have people who you know, you know, you have kind of a heritage station type thing, and they just kind of they're unimpressed.
Oh, Roger. Well, they're so busy covering their whatever that they don't. And it's my understanding that the head of Clear Channel iHeart is a shock jock, kind of like what's his face on you know, satellite, but probably not as good. But I mean, it's that kind of ilk that's leading our commercial broadcast industry, and I think that's just pathetic, and I think that the FCC should be ashamed.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the commercial broadcasting too, you know, quite honestly, is over-commercialized as well, and that you know, that's a part of radio seems to be, you know, I mean, just barely holding on listenership-wise when it should be growing some and things like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with over-commercialization of the stations, and it tends to run people up to other choices.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who ever said in their right mind that you could run a 7 or 8 minute spot set and somebody is going to be sitting there on the other side, you know? I always thought if the CIA ever wanted to get secret messages out, they could put it in the middle of an 8 minute spot set and no one would ever hear it.
You're probably right on that, because you know it does get to where some of them get you know, kind of excessively long and things like that. And overall, I understand management's viewpoint. If they can sell it, they want to you know, sell the quantity and get the money in the door. But they're not thinking long term. Everything is what's happening for next quarter.
Roger, I guess it's a jail term if they fail. I don't know. It's just pathetic, though, that there is no money for creativity. And why in the world would somebody want to listen to something that's not creative? I mean, you know, there's so many other options. The only possibility that they have for gaining any listenership is creativity, and there's no money for that. You know, you grew up in a time when creativity meant something, you know, but not today. It's those three guys in Syracuse.
Oh yeah, and even if a lot of cases, if you're working, you know, in a local market at a station, you know, the folks on the air, they've got a set of 10 liners. Read the liner and you know, add a weather forecast. In fact, but some of them these days have the computer-generated weather to the point to where they don't even have anybody recording the weather anymore. It's put together by a computer. I don't know whether you've heard that on an automation system. It actually sounds relatively convincing for what it is, but you know, talk about you know, getting it down to where there's basically nobody there.
Oh, Roger, and even if they are there, they're not there. I mean, there's nothing to do. It's all controlled by those three guys. But anyway, on the brighter side, gosh, I guess the future is in the Internet. The only problem with the Internet is that nobody knows you're there, you know. Whereas you used to be with AM radio, at least you could kind of figure that you had the possibility of somebody running across your signal within, depending on the power output, but a KW maybe within a 35-mile range, you know, they might be able to, you know, somebody might be able to hear you, you know. 50 KW, you know, might be a little bit better. That was one of the main reasons that I stopped at Louisville in my career, because I could compete on a national basis, you know, at nighttime anyway, as a clear channel. That was when clear channel meant something. Now it's iHeartRadio. They had to change their name because people were becoming aware of their clear channel name, and what a dog and pony show that was.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have one of the large legacy AM broadcast stations right here in Charlotte. In fact, their transmitter's not too far from the house here, probably less than 10 miles, and that's WPT on 1110. And they could still be heard up all as far north as Boston and down in Cuba and things like that. But with the way the band is anymore, it's not, you know, the quality's not there the way it used to be.
Oh, Roger. Well, I played around with loop antennas for AM, and I found that with the correct orientation on my loop, I could get WGN and what's the Charlotte one? BT?
Yes, BT.
Yeah, I could get both those, one off one end and one off the other end. Luckily, they were on different frequencies. Station comment, stand by just a moment, please. Larry, let me say threes to you, sir. I've enjoyed it. And if you get a chance, come join us next Friday afternoon on this frequency between 3:30 and 5. Roger.
Roger. And, Jim, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this afternoon, and enjoyed it much. And go ahead and pick up the comment station there. This is WLJS 73.
Roger, Larry, 3's that away. Comment station, go ahead.